Welcome to the OT Supervision Podcast. Pull up a chair, grab a cuppa, and let's have a chat. Today I want us to think about and talk about the OT Supervisor. And I have been really lucky across my career to have a whole variety of supervisors. Experienced, less experienced, sort of learning as they go. And I learned something from everybody, which is really nice. I have been in the NHS. I work in independent practice. I've had group supervision, I've had peer supervision, and most commonly I've had one-to-one supervision. And I was really fortunate in my time in the NHS in two different trusts where I had the opportunity to experience supervision from an external therapist. And those opportunities came up actually because we were working without a manager at the time in both situations, but actually it brought a real different perspective on what supervision was, what supervision could be, as well as a different view on where our own careers were, but where our service was at. So I feel like I've been really lucky to have a real variety of supervision experiences across my 30 years. So I really would like you to think about your supervision experience and the supervisors that you have worked with. And did you know that you actually can, or it's encouraged through the HCPC and the Royal College of OT, in terms of best practice around supervision, that you should be encouraged to have a choice of supervisor? And I know that sounds a bit weird because, right, I appreciate not every service or every organisation obviously have capacity to give someone a choice of supervisor. But I do think it's really important to consider what is going to work best for people. So generally we have a supervisor who's part of our team, part of the organisation that we are working in. So it's quite close supervision in terms of you see them every day. They might be able to observe some of your practice, or you might just catch them, in the kitchen when you're making a cuppa or at the photocopy machine. And you can have those sort of informal conversations as well as more formal supervision conversations. If you don't have someone in your team that supervises you, there might be someone within your wider trust who takes on that role for a period of time. But also external supervision is something that might be someone outside of your organisation. And there's a whole load of reasons for that. If you work in statutory services, it might just be that there's someone external who has the skill set that's required at that moment in time. It might be if you're an independent OT, well, actually, you don't have an obvious team that would have an OT who could supervise you. So therefore, you might choose an external supervisor who, again, has a skill set that you're looking for that would suit where you are currently in your career. And in independent practice, you want to be thinking about your OT business and OT business development. I also want us to think about, peer supervision doesn't have an obvious supervisor. Okay, so when we have other supervision forms, there is a supervisor, someone who holds that space for you. But when you have peer supervision, you kind of take on that role for each other. There is not just one person doing it. So I just wanted you to ponder really on what types of supervision you've had, but more importantly, what role has that supervisor played? Have they been an internal role so they're more integral, they understand the organisational context, maybe some of the politics, or have they been external and had a different view, a different perspective on what they can offer within that supervision space? Because I think one of the key things that I've really learned through my experiences in supervision is that when supervision has worked really well for me, it's when that supervisory relationship has been really solid. And by that, I don't mean like best friend solid. That's not what you're looking for from a supervisor. But actually, when someone has been able to create a space for me that has felt psychologically safe, that has had appropriate boundaries around it, but it has also respected boundaries and expectations and values of both parties. So that has been when that supervisory relationship has really been able to build, and where trust is able to be formed, and where you can, bring those moments. Like, we all have those moments when we think, oh, I have completely done something wrong here, or oh, I think I might have messed up, or I think I might have missed the point. I've had a session with someone and I think maybe I missed a really important piece of information, so I'm going to need to go back and figure that out, and figure out a way to work through that particular situation. Now, sometimes when we have those experiences, and certainly in my early career, I would be worried about having those conversations. I probably was worried to admit I'd made mistakes early on in my career, and I think that's quite common. I don't know, whether you felt that yourself. But actually, having that safe supervisory relationship, it creates a space where you can be vulnerable. And I definitely learned to do this. And yes, within my early career, there'd be some things I was able to be more vulnerable about over others. And being able to go in and go, I'm not sure I've understood this properly, or I think I might have made a mistake, or I think I might need to do that again, or I just don't get it, I don't understand. Like, as a qualified therapist, or just as a human being, let's face it, it can be really hard to be vulnerable with people in that way. So that supervisory relationship is really important in creating that space. And if you've had the opportunity to choose who your supervisor is, sometimes that can really help in building that safe supervisory relationship, because you've already made a choice. It's not being someone that's just being given the job, because let's face it, that happens. It's not just being someone who's got a space, so has capacity to take on a new supervisee, or it's not someone who is your line manager. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with line managers supervising. It is a dual role, but actually sometimes that can bring in its own complications, as I'm sure many of you will have experienced at times, when that vulnerability that you bring in when maybe you're unsure about something, or you've not quite got it right, you're worried, could there be an implication from a management point of view, because it's your line manager. So there's lots of complexity that can be within that supervisory relationship. And I think that's why it's really important that where it's possible, there's a conversation about who you might choose. And I know within teams that can be difficult. And I do appreciate there's different sizes of teams, and, we have recruitment freezes, we have staff shortages. I recognise all of those things. So it can be difficult. It's not straightforward. But I just want you to consider whether it's a possibility. And I also know that some people choose for themselves to have additional supervision outside of their workplace, so from an external supervisor. And that can form lots of different roles for people. So it could be a research reason that they're doing it. It could be like an academic reason that they want to work on a project and they want someone with that academic knowledge or specialist knowledge in a particular area. It might be you want to focus on some career development that actually you feel doesn't sit within your current role. So you don't want the supervision in your current role to be taken up with that time, because that's something else you're going to be doing in a slightly different space and in a potentially a different organisation. So there's lots of reasons why we might reach out. But also there's reasons sometimes where we're feeling burnt out, we're feeling worn down by everything that's going on within work, within life, and actually just having someone completely outside of all of that to talk to can be really valuable. And I think that's really important. I'm lucky as an independent occupational therapist. I get to choose my supervisor because I sourced them myself, and I took time to find a supervisor that worked best for me. And over my career, I've had lots of different supervisors, like I said. But it's about getting the right person to match that moment and place that you are in your career. And I'm really lucky with my current supervisor. She offers lots of value for me in terms of evidence-based, in terms of research for my clinical work, but also supporting my supervisory roles that I carry and supporting my OT business roles. So I can talk to her about any of those things. So I feel really fortunate to have that. So I made that choice because I'm an independent practice. I can hear some of you saying to me, yeah, that's fine, Lynsay, because you're paying for it yourself. But we're in a statutory service and we might not have the same choice. Well, I would just encourage you to think about that for a moment. We all have a choice. So if you feel it might be helpful for you at some point, at some stage, some chapter in your career to talk to someone outside of your organisation, I just want you to know that's okay. Like, you don't need permission to do that. But I think sometimes we don't look beyond what's within our organisation because we're just used to having it all there. But I would encourage you to reflect and consider whether that might be something that's useful for you, depending on what stage you are in your career. And I also know that when people are recovering from burnout and they're transitioning back into an organisation or an OT business, sometimes they also find it helpful to have someone external to just bounce things off, to be that professional sounding board. So that supervisory relationship is key. That safe space, that space we hold for the kind of protection of, you can say anything here and I'm going to kind of hold that for you, and then we'll unpick it, and then you can pick it back up when you're ready and take it away, and hopefully you'll take it away in a different shape. And ultimately that's what we want to get out of a supervisory relationship. So I just think it's really important to understand that you have options. So your takeaway from today's podcast is to reflect on that. So maybe just a 5-minute reflection. Have you ever tried external supervision? Has it ever been offered to you? What do you think it might give you in terms of what value it could give you? Is there someone else in your organisation that you think would be really useful to have supervision with? And even if it's not all the time, is there the opportunity to do that every now and then? What value would that add to you, to your professional and your personal development, if you had that opportunity to choose your supervisor? If you've already made that choice and you are loving it, I equally would love to know about that. But for today, I want you just to have a little reflection on that. And like I say, feel free to contact me, to drop me a message, drop me an email, and let me know your thoughts on it. So until next time, take care of yourself, and I'll speak to you soon.